The 2017 Silver Gavel Award for books goes to Evicted, Poverty and Profit in the American City, the Crown Publishing Group. Evicted, Poverty and Profit in the American City is path-breaking ethnography exploring the processes of eviction, legal and otherwise. Author Matthew Desmond tells the story of 8 poor Milwaukee families as they struggled to maintain their homes. Evicted is unflinching and compassionate, heartbreaking, as well as hopeful. By focusing on rental housing and eviction, the author seeks to change the paradigm about how we think about poverty in America. Grounded in absolute solid research and ethnographic methods, what makes Evicted so compelling is the author's skillful use of narrative. Desmond captures in vivid detail the everyday struggles that his subjects face. Evicted dissects the laws, policies, and political and social constructs that produce and exacerbate profound housing inequality and discrimination. Desmond offers practical solutions to begin addressing America's housing crisis for our most impoverished citizens. These include publicly funded legal services for low-income defendants in housing court. His book is an absolute must-read for those who wish to deepen their understanding of how eviction results in poverty as well as profit in the American city, and its implication for our justice system and our society as a whole. In his interview with the ABA, Desmond discusses his focus on eviction, how it is fundamentally a legal process, what prepared him to write the book, and why he thinks eviction is truly the key to understanding poverty.
I wanted to write a book about poverty that wasn't just about poor people or poor neighborhoods. I thought poverty was a relationship, and I was looking for a process that would allow me to illuminate that. And I thought eviction does that. It brings in tenants and landlords and all sorts of folks from across the city. And I also wanted to understand the link between housing and poverty. I moved into a trailer park on the far south side of Milwaukee, lived there for about 5 months, and then moved into a room in a rooming house in the inner city of Milwaukee and lived there for about 10 months. And from those 2 neighborhoods, followed families getting evicted, followed the landlords doing the evicting. If you get arrested in America, you have no right to an attorney, but you have no such right in civil court. So the vast majority of folks in Milwaukee do not have attorneys, but the vast majority of landlords either have a lot of experience in housing court or do have representation. And under those conditions, a lot of tenants summoned to eviction court don't show up. And so the sound of eviction court in Milwaukee is just a name, a pause, and then 3 stamps signifying default eviction. So what's eviction do to people? Eviction causes loss. People lose not only their homes, but often their stuff, which is piled on the sidewalk or taken by movers. Kids lose their schools, you lose your community. It takes a good amount of time and money to establish a home, and eviction can delete all that. An eviction comes with a mark, which is also a legal process. And that mark or that blemish can prevent you from moving into good housing in a safe neighborhood, because many landlords turn away folks with an eviction on their name. I think we have to conclude that eviction is not just a condition of poverty, it's a cause of it. With this book, we have been able to see a really tangible impact. For example, New York City just passed the first ever right to counsel and housing court. I testified in favor of that change based on the evidence that we've amassed about the consequences of eviction's fallout on families and children. I think the book opened up a new avenue with a very simple claim that it makes, that without stable shelter, everything else falls apart. And housing and eviction are central to understanding inequality in America today.
Accepting the silver gavel is Matthew Desmond, the author.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much for showing out tonight. I want to thank whoever edited that. That was incredible. You podcast people need to hire that editor. I'd like to thank the ABA for this honor. And I'd also just like to thank the lawyers in the room whose firms are dedicated to representing the most vulnerable and poorest among us. We've reached a point today where the majority of poor renting families are spending most of their income on housing costs. The incomes of families of modest means have been flat, they've fallen, their housing costs have soared, and housing policy hasn't filled the gap. Only about 1 in 4 families who qualify for housing assistance today get it. So most poor families are spending most of what they have on housing costs. 1 in 4 of those families are spending 70% of their income just on rent and utilities. And we've moved from a place in America where evictions used to be rare and scandalous and draw crowds to a place where evictions are incredibly commonplace and are overturning the lives of low-income families and their low-income schools in those communities. The good news is there are solutions that work, and one solution is having a lawyer by your side. The sad news is the legal aid only serves about 1 in 10 of the needs. So the more that the ABA can do, the more the lawyers in this room can do to represent families who are at risk of homelessness, to devote a little time upstream to stem the consequences of eviction downstream that we currently incur, I think is a wise public investment. Thank you for everything you all do to represent folks in the courts, and thank you so much for this honor.